Hey friends, Jessica here from Creators Couture. And in today's video, I want to share with you something a little bit different. I created some artwork for a personal reason, and so I kind of want to show you a little bit behind the scenes of that artwork and also how I made it. And this artwork has a little bit of a personal story because I'm not sure if you're aware, but I live in Nice, France. And last week on the 29th, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, we had an attack here, and it might not have gotten a lot of coverage on the US news, but it's a big deal here. So this is this photo here you see on the left. This is our little Notre-Dame cathedral. And it kind of looks a little bit like a Disney World version of the Notre Dame in Paris, but it's the Notre Dame Cathedral in Nice, and it's right in the heart of the main shopping street and the commerce street. And in fact, Nice is, it's kind of a big city for France, but it's still not that big, and there's still like one big street down the middle. It's called Jean Médecin, and this is right in the center of it. And we pass this church like at least 3 times a week. I pass it all the time. I don't think about it too much. And yeah, so somebody went into this church in the morning and attacked some people, and 3 people died. He cut the head off of 2 people, and a third woman was stabbed and made it outside. And the last thing that she said was to tell her children that she loves them. So it was a really sad thing here for Nice. And, it's sad again for the city of Nice to have to go through this again. And, even just makes me a little bit emotional thinking about it because, it hits really close to home. And in fact, that day my boyfriend he got let off work early, and he was running to the shops before we started our confinement again, which is just past here on the left. And he was even, mentioned to me afterwards. Basically, he passed by just after it happened, and he kind of got caught up in the police barricades and stuff. And I'll show you a little picture here that he sent me. This is just after, and there was police, and they had blocked people in certain areas, so nobody could, run or whatever. So it was a little bit stressful. But just before that, he was thinking even to stop by the Basilica to light a candle. And so, yeah, so it was a little bit different, and it just hit really close to home. And it's really sad, 3 people who were doing, their mass, or they were, lighting a candle, or I don't think it was mass, but, they were there in a place that for them brought them peace, and they lost their life. So it was really sad. And so I was really moved, and I kind of wanted to put my energy into something positive. So I created this artwork, and I kind of wanted to make something that, like a lot of times when there's an attack or something, you see some artwork and it's sad. There's some reference to blood or something like this, but I really wanted to create kind of a remembrance artwork. And, with the hope I can maybe share it within the city, or share it with some people, and maybe it might bring some peace or comfort to someone, and as a tribute, so that these people are not forgotten. And so whenever I was looking at the Basilica, there was 3 people who died, so I thought it would be interesting. I kind of had, it's a little classic, but I thought it would be cool to have, not cool, but appropriate to, kind of use these 3 areas here to reference them. And then I use the symbol of a dove because that, it's a very classic symbol for peace, for remembrance, and things like that. So that's kind of where that came from. And also, like when I started it, I kind of didn't know where it would go. And this is something that I think a lot of, now to get into kind of the art part, sometimes when you start a project, you kind of have an idea, but you don't know exactly how it's going to work out. So, you know, if you're an artist, I think you could probably relate to this. But I had, you know, thought about using my Instapressionist method, you know, because I'm not a natural illustrator, but I love to illustrate. So I always am creating tools and tutorials to help me do so. And so for this, what I did was I wanted to make a simplified version of it. And, you know, I started off with some things and I kind of just stumbled upon this idea and this technique, but I thought I wanted some, you know, simpler shapes and really textural brush strokes. And so how it ended up working out is that I used exclusively my brushwork brushes, which are very textural brushes. And we can just zoom in here and you can see I wanted to see those brush strokes. So we've got, you know, like lots of those textural brush strokes in there. And yeah, so I used a really variety of different textures and played around. And honestly, it took me a long time because, you know, I'm not a natural, but this is to kind of give you some encouragement too if you don't feel like you're a natural illustrator, but you can, you know. So I used exclusively my brushwork brushes. I used a really muted color palette, and I have some of the neutrals you can see here. But when I was working on this, I was working on the shapes, and I didn't want to get bogged down with choosing which colors, and because as you can see, there's some different grays and browns inside here, and I didn't want to like overly stress myself about deciding those colors while I'm working. I was just trying to get the shapes. So I had everything, like I did basically everything in one color, and then I added the different colors in the gold later. And this is another tip, you know, like I always want to try to get things done the fastest with the least effort. So I looked and I tried to find a picture of the Basilica from straight on because I wanted that kind of angle. And so I think this is the reference one that I worked off of. And so I simply laid this, you know, under my design and put it at a low opacity so that the proportions and everything, I could get those right because, you know, just to freehand it, you know, was like, why freehand it when you can just, you know, not trace, but, you know, kind of trace over it and, you know, make sure that your proportions are right. Because for a building is one of those things that, you know, it looks, I wanted to have, you know, the proportions look right and everything. And I don't draw a lot of buildings. So I used that as like a reference guide. And I think it was really helpful, helped me kind of, you know, block out those shapes. And then one thing that I think might be useful, as I mentioned, when I did everything, I painted it all in one color and then I applied different colors later. And one trick that I hadn't actually used a lot in Photoshop, but I wanted to like let you guys know now. By the way, this thing had like 1,000,000 layers or over 200 because I put a lot of things, all these like brush strokes on their own layer in case I wanted to like move them or mess with them. So let me just select a layer here. And of course I didn't name my layers, very classic, but they are actually, the color is applied by a color overlay. Here's like a brush stroke going across right here. One tip that I found really useful for applying the colors afterwards is if you want to apply a color from your color swatches as a color overlay, which I did because I have like 200 layers. So if you just drag that on there, it'll create a clipping mask. You know, let me just show you here. If I take this color, I'll grab a brighter one and drag it on top of this layer. It creates a clipping mask color fill, which you're not going to see it because I have a color overlay. So there we go. You can see it. But with like 100+ layers or something, I don't want to add more layers to the mix. I'm like, okay, that's going to make things even harder to select and everything. So let me delete that. So what I did, and that like another little tip that I can't believe I haven't been using, on the Mac, if you select Option Command, and I'm not exactly sure what it is on the PC, but you can Google it, but I hit Option Command and hold these down and then drag that swatch onto your layer. and then it applies it as a color overlay. And so that was really helpful for me, and a tip that I thought might help my fellow designers. So that really helped me to change those colors in a fast way, and I created this color palette of very muted kind of neutrals. I wanted kind of some grays, but also some, like, basically I wanted warm grays. And so I did a combination of different shades of gray and warm gray and kind of browns. And honestly, like, this turned out better than I could have been, or better than I thought I was capable of. So, it just shows, the tools can really help you. And I took my time, blocked out these shapes here. And I kind of, what was a little bit hard was, kind of deciding what tones to do, because I kind of wanted to have the idea of it like nighttime and illuminated. And so I was, working off this, but also if you look at one of my other drawings, or no, one of the other reference photos, you can see how it's illuminated at night. And I didn't necessarily feel the need to make it illuminated in the exact realistic ways, but this was also kind of something that helped me just for reference. So like the places here where they had the light, I tried to kind of have a little light there and some lights on the windows, and reference that, but not 100% realistically. And I think it's a successful illustration because of that. It's not too detailed, and you really feel the artisticness with the visible brush strokes and the texture, and a little bit of an imperfect loose execution, which is totally my style, because to be honest, I'm not really capable of a perfect execution. So I kind of, sometimes it's good to adapt our styles to what our strengths are. So my strength is not like a literal drawing style, so I go for something more abstract. And in the end, I think it's more interesting for me, and it's more fun. And yeah, that's kind of, rather than just force something that's a style that's not me, I like to work to my strengths and weaknesses. And I would like to say that I really envisioned this, how it turned out, before I started working on it, but it was really a question of like trial and error. And I worked on it, like I started it in the evening the one night, and I worked on it all the next day and a little bit of the next day. So, it took a little, I did other things and answered emails and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so hopefully this, just kind of wanted to share that and do something different and share the backstory behind this. And I've made this available on my website for a free download. And honestly, I think, I hope some people in Nice can see it, because I think this is something that even for myself, I would like to print, and this is something that could go up on anyone's wall and be like a nice memory, and not, it's not graphic, but it's a little more inspirational and peaceful. But it's the Notre-Dame, which is part of everybody's, life. It's part of the city here. And so I think I think in the end it turned out to be a nice tribute, and I hope that it might bring a little moment of peace or calm to somebody in the city. So that's why I made it, and that's a little bit behind the story. So hopefully you guys have a great weekend, and let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments.